So it means generations, and it talks about generations being passed along from Avram to Yitzchak, and Yitzchak eventually to Yaakov.
Right.
So this is the chat. This is the parsha with the blessings that are given to Yaakov or to Esau. So the opening part of the parsha talks about the birth of the Yitzchak and Rivka are praying on behalf to get birth. Rivka was Akara, was unable to conceive, and she does conceive, and she has twins in her stomach, and she thinks she doesn't know what's going on. She's concerned it's one fetus, which seems to have a very confused existence. She says something is wrong, and so the oracle or this Chain Be'aver, whoever it is, responds and says, no, it's two. You have two nations, two opposites. You have twins, but they're very different. And sure enough, one is born. It's called Esau, the first one, and he looks different. He's hairy, he's grown, he's finished, and following him becomes Yaakov, who is the second, the younger of the two. Esau develops into a Yodei Tzayid, a hunter, and Yaakov becomes the Yoshev Olam, the one who sits in the 12s and the tents.
The translation here in English is two regimes, which sounds like they're two opposing armies.
Two
regimes.
Yes, correct. Well, the better translation is probably nation. La'om. La'om, the word in Hebrew is la'om mila'om. La'om.
Mila'om means
la'umah. La'umit is national. Ummah is a nation.
Yeah, but why regime? Regime to me sounds like army, doesn't it?
It does. Sounds dictatorial.
Yeah, already they're putting you into the phase that there's going to be a fight. There's going to be a struggle here.
You write your own translation.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question really is, in terms of Yaakov, Yaakov is cooking up this lentil soup, and Esav comes in from the field, and he says, I'm really hungry, right? So let's just look at some of the psukim in page 126. You got it, verse 28, 29. And verse 29, Yazid vayaz Yaakov Nazir vayvoisav v'nasalev v'yev. Esav comes in from the field and he's hungry. Yaakov says to Yaakov, Haliteni nam min adam azeh. Give me some of this red soup. Hello? I came to Shema Edom, therefore he's called Edom because of this red soup, which we're about to read about what happens. Yep. And Yaakov says to him, sell me the birthright. And Esau says, I know this is Eldon's. So I'm going to die. What good is my bechora? Okay, and so we're just starting the Chumash. Page 126 in the Chumash, and what happens is Yaakov says, sell me the birthright. Esau sells the birthright. He says, Lama zali b'chora, why do I need the b'chora? I'm going to die. Yaakov says, swear to me. He swears to him and he sells his birthright. And Yaakov gives him to Esau the lechem, the bread, the zirah dashim. He gives him the lentils, porridge. He eats, and Esau spurns the birthright. So, why does Esau not want the birthright?
It's not that. The question. My first question would be,
what is the birthright?
Oh.
That's the first question.
Okay, yeah, you're right. What is the birthright? I guess he gets the blessing from the father.
Well, that's
he's going to be the next to carry on the family name or the family traditions.
Right. Okay.
It gives him more power.
He gets some special privileges as being the oldest. Yes.
No. So my question is, why?
Here's a Chumash. That's the RAMBAM. I forgot to bring the second one.
If I ask someone to get me a glass of water,
yeah, I'm listening.
Would they say to me, well, yeah, I'll give you a glass of water, but give me your birthright? Is that the first question? You know what I mean? Like, give me a bowl of soup. Give me your birthright.
So you have to.
Why would they say?
Well, but you would actually say, your response would be, would you do that to me? Would you just give it to me for a bowl of soup? In other words.
No, but I wonder what entered into Yaakov's mind to say that kind of response to his brother.
It's a good question. Okay.
He would say, yeah, sure, I'll get you a bowl. Or listen, if I give you a bowl, you'll do the dishes.
Right.
Okay, but not give me your birthright.
But you see that Esav is willing to part with the birthright. Esav
Right,
says,
right.
"What do
So
I need it for?"
something must have happened
So
before
what's
that.
going on? So why is Esav? Question is, why does Yaakov want it? Why does Esav want to give it up? Why
Right.
is it worthless to Esav? So that's some of the discussion that the Ramban is going to go through. And I apologize, I brought the wrong volume. I see there's a bracious too. Okay, so there is English here. Okay,
Oh, okay, I got it.
Shavel.
Shabbat.
Okay. Ramban, volume 2. Okay.
Is that Rambam?
Okay, and the Ramban is on. There you go.
This was another English.
Right, there you go, another English one. This is going to be, I don't have the page in front of me, but it's chapter 25, verse 34.
What's Toto?
What's Toldos?
Toto.
That's how they wrote it. Okay.
25.
25:34. Chavhei pasuk lamed daled.
Are we in Rambam now?
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So the Ramban tries to explore what was it that he really did despise about the Bechorah. Okay, and he actually is going to suggest, based upon the Ibn Ezra, that Ibn Ezra said that Yitzchak had no monetary assets, and therefore Esav thought he was going to get nothing, which is a very unusual kind of shot. But we'll go through it and see how he rejects it. So what does Esav actually say? He says, "I'm going to die." Why is he going to die? Because if I have to work so closely to my father to inherit the birthright, I won't be able to take it. And says the Ramban, "V'yivez Esav es ha'bechorah." The pasuk says what Shlomo Melech was really saying in the book of Proverbs, 25:34. It should be maybe the first couple of pages here.
Before that?
What page?
Well, that's cut.
320.
No, it's over here. 320 is over here.
Maybe it's different edition.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is 25 starts here. We go that way.
We're going the wrong way. Okay, here we go. Okay, good.
Okay.
So once again, Esav says to Yaakov he has no reason for the Bechorah because he's going to die, which means, in other words, he's always in a place of danger by virtue of being a hunter, so he will not outlive his father, and therefore it's no worth to really get a birthright. That's what the Ramban suggests. Then he says that really it's more than that Esav was mizalzel in the Bechorah, in the value of it, because all Esav really wanted to do was just to kind of get sated with what the Olam Hazeh really is. So, V'yivez Esav as a Bechorah. Bazla davar yechavei. There's a pasuk that is taken by Shlomo Melech. The Bazla davar, a person who looks down upon something, yechavei lo, will come to become damaged by it, or will consider to be damaged by the object. That's more pasuk of Mishlei. So Avalei Kvar Amar Tam Shabavuro Neot Tal Mechiram Ibnei Sholech Lamut Betzudo Achayot. The reason the Torah tells us why Esav didn't want the birthright, he's out there hunting, is when he's hunting animals, one day one animal is going to bite back at him, and it seems therefore he felt that it's pretty certain he's not going to live out past the age of Yitzchak, and he will never inherit him. So what good is this investment in investing in a Bechorah if he will be gone by the time it becomes reality? And it says, it says that he ate, he drank, and he got up and he despised it. Because it just tells us what happened after he ate, after he drank. He went back to his hunting. And this is the reason that he despised the birthright. Because the foolish people focus on the Olam Hazeh. They just want to eat, drink, do what they want to do. They're not concerned about what happens tomorrow. So the first approach the Ramban says the reason that Esav kind of did not want the birthright, because Esav lived for here and now. He was even questioning how long he would live based upon his the professional dangers that existed in being a hunter. And second of all, even if he did, he just really wanted to focus on the present moment. He didn't want to live beyond that. Yes.
But it's a big assumption here that Bechorah meant the physical inheritance.
Correct.
Assets.
Right. That's true.
That's the assumption here. But I don't think that's universally accepted. I think.
What do you think?
On the contrary.
Well, what do you think the Bechorah normally
why would Yaakov be so materialistic and go for money? I thought the Bechorah was the leadership. The leadership of a great people.
So part of the leadership is you get twice as much in a primogeniture.
Yeah, but that's secondary.
Okay, so in a normal family, is the eldest brother the leader?
No, because then I am.
So to some extent, yes. To some extent, yes. I am the oldest of 5 boys, and I think my brothers do look to me sometimes for direction. Unfortunately, we're spread in different places. They live in Israel, and I live here, so it doesn't come up that frequently. But I think it does color relationships. But you're right. It does appear that he is looking at this as the Bechorah as some kind of physicality. That's true.
In that case, really, a bowl of soup doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Well, it does make sense. Getting the Bechorah is an investment in the future. Right. Like, so if he were to sell the Bechorah, he's going to lose that ability to get the money. It's like saying, do you sell the stocks now? You lose whatever future gains you may get. Plus you pay capital gains tax and all that. I'm saying, but
the whole story then becomes.
Well, why do we think it's not about money?
What?
If it's leadership, it's also leadership in everything, including physical leadership, including moral leadership.
Because he doesn't, because
first place the moral leadership.
Because Isaac doesn't seem to be that type of person that's concerned about money.
Well, so what actually is the brachas that Yitzchak actually gives, whether it's the Yaakov is dressed as Esav dressed as Yaakov? The brachas are material wealth. Yitain l'cholakim itala shemayim, rov dagan v'tirosh. Then yavducha amim, nations will be subservient to you. You'll be able to control them because of your great wealth. So it looks like there's a physical part of this. So Esav in his small-mindedness thinks that's all there is. Now, commentaries will tell us, Rashi quotes the Medrash, says it's really about working the Beis Hamikdash. It's really about coming close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's, then I think, what you're influenced by. But the simple meaning of the story is, the Bechorah was the leader who also inherited the lion's share of the wealth. There are 2 sons, it's going to be 2-1. He will get 2/3 of the largesse of the estate.
I mean, it seems to me like it was just like, take my Bechor, whatever it's called.
It's an inheritance.
Take my inheritance. Just give me a bowl of soup. But he didn't really. I don't think he really meant it.
It's an inheritance. Like, to be a scholar today, do you need to inherit scholarship?
According to Halakha, I don't think that such a transaction would even hold, because it's so disproportionate. The price is nowhere near the value, so it wouldn't even work.
It may have been it may have been disproportional, but for Esav it was the worth of what he was giving away. He didn't think he would use it. Okay. So you're right. There is a whole other slew of mishvarshim who will say it's really about spirituality, and Esav doesn't want spirituality. That's more midrashic than simple pshat. Okay. But anyway, you're right. The approach here at this point seems to be physical. Rabbi Avram mishtabesh bechan ma'od, and here Rabbi Avram is the Ibn Ezra. Makes a very big error. Shomar ki beizah habachora bavur shoshem mamon of laviv. So the Ibn Ezra suggests, Ibn Ezra is a pashtan, gives a lot of pshat, and says the reason that Esav didn't want the bechora because he felt that his father had no money. He didn't see any assets anyway. V'rabim yismu ki ozav lo Avraham mamon rav, and there are many questions that can be asked on this because Avram left behind a great wealth. And as if there was really nobody like the wealth of Avraham in his lifetime. And then you'd have to say that only he came to really perhaps at the end of his life. And I can prove to you that this is what the Ibn Ezra says. The Ibn Ezra says that he became poor, and I'll prove to you, that Yitzchak loved Esav because of his venison. Now, so first of all, you see that Yitzchak liked Esav because of his venison, because of what he did. If there was enough food in the house, and he thought he was an Adam Nichbad, he wouldn't have sold his Bechorah for Nazir for simply a bowl of lentil soup. So it must be that food and money and assets were very scarce. And if the father had a lot of good food at home because he had a lot of assets, why would he tell young Esav to bring him from his hunt? So Ibn Ezra says, you see from a number of points in the story that it looks like there's a lack of food, a lack of assets here in this family. Esav is willing to give up his Bechorah because he can get a bowl of lentil soup. It means there's no food at home. Yeah, Yitzchak says, bring me what you catch. Why? And also it looks like Yaakov doesn't have any of the clothing. When Yaakov comes and dressed up, when he takes the clothing of Esav, Lama lo Yaakov b'gadim chamudot. Why didn't Yaakov have his own some special hunting clothing, his outdoor clothing? And also, even when he leaves later on, why does Yaakov, when he's forced to flee, his mother doesn't give him any money? He could have been a rich man if there were assets in the house. Because Yaakov says when he has the dream in Parashat Vayetze, he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu give me bread and garments to wear. How come his mother, when he ran away from Esav at the end of the parsha, why didn't she give him a whole lot of financial assets? She loves him. He was forced to become a shepherd, to watch sons, so he had nothing. So if Yaakov, when he ran away, had nothing, it must be he came from a house that had nothing. And therefore, and later on he becomes rich. When he says they became rich, this is later on. But that's only much later on before he became very old. But at this point it's very possible that there was no money there. And those people who are blind think that having riches is a great mile, it's a great level for tzaddikim, and therefore the tzaddikim should be rich, and they're not. But Eliyahu will actually prove differently, because when Eliyahu goes to his well, to the Nachal, to hide, he has nothing in the cave that he stays in, and the ravens have to bring him. So it's really the fact that Yitzchak was poor. You see that tzaddikim are poor. Tzaddikim don't look for riches like Eliyahu is poor. When Yaakov is forced to run away, he doesn't have anything with him. Esav is willing to sell his birthright because there's no food in the house. Rivka gives no money to Yaakov when he runs away. All of this seems to underscore, according to the Ibn Ezra, that the financial straits of the house of Yitzchak at this point were very dire, which is why Esav was willing to sell the birthright. Let me just read my lines. Vodhem shalim. And other people and others ask, Vodhem shivod yishalu. Lama chisar Hashem amon Yitzchak. Why was it that God took away money from Yitzchak, his money? V'ulai yodienu lama chisar mononav. So Ramban says, if you're going to ask how come God took money away from Yitzchak, I'll ask how come he became blind at the end of his life. And don't give me a drash kind of answer for this. Because there is actually some kind of sod that goes with it. Which we're not going to look for now. Because God has ways, and sometimes we really can't understand the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so in other words, you could have said, the drash tells us, why did Yitzchak become blind? Because the fires of the Avodah Zarah that Esau's wives were worshipping, the smoke went into his eyes. The tears of the angels at the Akedah went into Yitzchak's eyes, and that's why his eyesight was diminished and became weakened. These are all drash kinds of answers. The real answer is we don't know why everything happens in life. So we don't know why Yitzchak became blind. We also don't know why he became poor. Don't think that this is such a good thing he became poor. So this is all the questions. Yes, Dan?
So not only Yitzchak became poor, but Abraham also then. We said he was very rich.
Yes.
And now it looks like when he died,
he's poor.
He didn't have anything to give to his own
That's
son.
Right. That's exactly what you'd have to suggest. Correct. That's exactly what the Ibn Ezra is suggesting. What the Ibn Ezra is trying to give you is a pshat reason. Why was it that Esav would be willing to consider selling his birthright? And once again, if he's looking at this from a financial aspect. It says based upon money. Esav felt there's no money that's there. And therefore he says, you know what, and plus he needs to eat. And the food was scarce. So he says, sell me the birthright for this bowl of lentil soup. I'll get the lentil soup before anyone else will get. So it was worth. So in this case, the birthright was equal to the lentil soup because both of them were very scarce. It's not that there was a couple of beans. They didn't have the beans. That's the approach of the Ibn Ezra.
Now, tell me something. At what time did the kosher laws about the way you kill an animal come into being?
Come into being?
Yeah, because it says here talking about venison.
Right.
And he's a hunter. So how did he kill the animal?
Well, maybe he shechted the animal. He caught the animal and killed it. You want an answer, that would be the answer.
It's not that they were just an arrow, like a bow and arrow, and he killed it. No, because then you find that.
Right.
Then
this is a general question. Did the avot actually keep the mitzvot?
Right.
Okay, so there's a Ramban talks about the Ramban talks about that as well in this parsha. We'll talk about that as well. Okay, but that's a general question. Do the patriarchs keep all the mitzvot? What they don't, what we know is Avram and Achai ripping a limb off a living animal. That is prohibited even for Bnei Noah, for anyone. But the question is, are they keeping shechita and so forth?
Yeah.
So in other words, everything that he's quoted now basically is being quoted from the Ibn Ezra, and now the Ramban is actually going, and the pshat is there was no money. Avram lost his money. Yitzchak had no money. If he got rich later on, it was later on, much later on when he got old. Right now, there's nothing in the house. Esav buys the birthright because he wants to eat, and that's how you explain what's going on. And he brings proofs because Yaakov leaves without money because Yaakov doesn't even have a second set of clothing that he would wear. His outdoor clothing he's got to borrow from Esav. His mother doesn't give him any money. The father looks like he doesn't have money and doesn't have food in the house. He's got to go send Esav to bring him food to bring from the hunt. All this seems to indicate a dearth of food, a dearth of assets. So that's the Ibn Ezra. Says the Ramban, Vani Tomea. And I ask that if you think that you didn't understand why Yitzchak became blind, who made the Ibn Ezra blind to give the wrong pshat? Who gave him a blinded pshat? In other words, the Ramban is many times very, very biting. He's biting, especially when he takes down the Ibn Ezra. Okay, he uses some very choice terminology sometimes for others, like the Rambam, but the Ibn Ezra he saves for the best jabs. Okay, so in other words, you're saying that, well, you know what? That you don't understand why he got poor, because maybe rich tzaddikim shouldn't be poor. Well, I don't understand why he became blind either. But you, Rabbi Nezir, understand why you got blind here. Kinei Avram hiniach lahon rav, because Avram actually left to Yitzchak a lot of riches. V'yavad osher hu miyad kodem inyan hazeh, and the wealth was really maybe lost before that. Od lefnei shedvarei shmo razu. So maybe before this happened, I'm not sure I understand fully the connection here. And because according to the Ramban, I guess he's explaining according to the Ibn Ezra, the Ramban is saying, I don't understand what the Ibn Ezra wrote, because according to the Ibn Ezra, you'd have to say that Avram left to Yitzchak a lot of wealth, and all this wealth was lost before the story. And therefore Esav now comes to sell the Bechorah because they have no money. He's really complaining about the Ibn Ezra's interpretation, so he summarizes it. Because you'd have to say that Esav hated the birthright and wanted to get rid of it, even because of this. And selling the birthright happens even while they're young, before he's even married. So it must be he grew up in a house where there was nothing. As the Pasukim Kasher Seber Katuv. And then very quickly afterwards, after the birthright was sold, you'd have to say he gets very rich, and then he goes to the land of Plishtim, until he became very rich, Ad Ki Gadal Miyod, by Kanabov Sere Plishtim, he gets rich, and then he became poor again. Says the Ramban as follows. According to Ibn Ezra that he's poor, there are actually three types of periods. Avram has riches, we know Avram is rich. Yitzchak loses the riches, and that's why Esav then wants to give away the birthright to get the bowl of lentil soup. The story that follows immediately afterwards is Yitzchak goes down to the land of Plishtim, and the people respect him. He's rich again. Then he comes back and he's got the story where he's going to he gets old and he wants to give the blessing. Looks like he's poor because he sends out Esav to go bring for him venison, and Yaakov doesn't have another pair of clothing. He's got to borrow his brother's clothing. So you have to say, rich Avraham, poor Yitzchak, rich Yitzchak, poor Yitzchak. It doesn't make sense. The market was not that volatile. Okay? So if I buy into your pshat, then there seems to be like a lack of consistency through the parsha. So that's one. Second of all, the Yod, it says, that after it says, after Avram died, that God blessed Yitzchak, which means, what's the blessing? And the real blessing is in the Avot, and this is what I think Dan may take umbrage at, but according to the Ramban, the bracha is Tosefet B'Yosher B'Nachasim B'Kavod. The real bracha is you has more riches in the chasim and possessions and respect. And if he lost all his father's money, how could the pasuk say in the beginning of the parsha that Vayivarach Elokim et Yitzchak beno? It would mean he lost the money. And then afterwards, later on, it says again in the land of Plishtim, it says Ve'yeh imcha v'avarechecha, I'll bless you again. And it became, so what does that mean? He became rich, he became poor. It makes no sense. So in other words, Yitzchak was rich. And if you know tzaddikim, says the Ramban, who actually are poor, which do exist, so it doesn't mean that it happens to all the tzaddikim who are blessed by God. Regular tzaddik can be rich or be poor. Super tzaddik, who has the blessing of God, part of the blessing of God is he will not be sad, he will not, because he does have riches. So it's not a bad thing. It's not bad to be rich. You can be rich. Sometimes we find tzaddikim are not rich, but that's not a proof that Yitzchak was poor. So all of this, says the Ramban, about what the Ibn Ezra suggests is rubbish, is wrong. And aval hayu avod kolam kimlachim. The patriarchs all lived like kings. They lived like royalty. And all the nations of the world came to them and made covenants with them. Avimelech makes a covenant with Avraham. When Avraham comes to bury Sarah, they call him Adoni, my master. V'katuv, and it says Vayishavu ish b'achiv, that later on that Yitzchak makes a brit with Avimelech. V'imha Yitzchak ra mazal ma'beid nechsei aviv. If Yitzchak had bad luck and he lost all his father's possession, how will it say Echamru ra'u ra'inu ki Yashem yimach? How will the Philistines, the Avimelech people, say we saw that God is with you? God looks like God is against them. So all of this is wrong. Okay. All this is not correct. But what's the real reason? So why Esav looked down upon the Bechorah, and here the Ramban summarizes what is the pshat. This is for 6 words. The reason that Esav did not want the Bechorah, because the wickedness of his heart. In other words, he couldn't think of anything beyond the here and now. He couldn't think of anything physical, and he couldn't realize what he could lose. And perhaps this is where the Ramban is hinting that the Bechorah is a little more than physical. Right? It's about something about responsibility. And now, so therefore, Yitzchak is rich. Now, if Yitzchak is rich, Ramban needs to explain all of the things, the supports that Ibn Ezra thought that he was poor. Okay? So what does it mean? What does it actually mean to be the Bechorah? So I told you about the primogeniture. He gets twice. Ramban says we don't know if this is really true. It's possible that when the Torah talks about you give twice the inheritance to the Bechor, maybe that may not have existed now. It was only later. But rather the Bechor would inherit the level or the leadership of the father and his srara, his rule. That he would have honor and respect against the younger brother. So in other words, this is really coming to expand what Bechorah is. Bechorah is not about money, and it's not about they didn't have money. Bechorah really means that you were respected by the members of your household. All the other brothers looked up to you. And therefore, when Esav comes to disguise himself and as Yaakov to get the Bechor, he says, Ani bincha bechorecha. I am your son, your Bechor. Lomar ki hu Bechor ro'i litbarech. I am the Bechor that should get the blessing. And this is what Yosef says to Yaakov. Put your hand put your right hand on the hand of Ephraim and Manasseh. Lakdimo b'bracha, so that you should get the bracha, and the leadership of the family goes to the Bechor. Maybe the Bechor did get more. Didn't get primogeniture. That only comes from the Torah later on. So therefore, the real leadership, the real point of being the Bechor is being the leader of the family that people looked up to. So this comes from Ramban's pshat. So we have three pshat. The first pshat was that Esav really wanted money, and he didn't. He only looked at here and now. Rabbi Nezer says it's even worse than you think because there was no money in the house. Ramban says it's not true, and it's not just really about money, it's really about being the leader of the family who should get the blessing, which is continuing the traditions of what the father stood for. Okay, so all of this is about what the Ramban said. So far so good, or am I going too fast? So the Ramban is really arguing against the Ibn Ezra, says that Bechorah, being Bechorah, is more than simply double. It's really about something about leadership, Kavod, Maila, Tzirato, Srarato, Malatov, and so forth. Now the Ramban needs to dispatch with all the proofs that the Ibn Ezra said. What would the Ibn Ezra say? That he proved, one gave a whole number of examples to prove that Yitzchak was poor and there were no assets in the house. So why would Yitzchak send out Esav to go bring venison if he had all kinds of food stocked in the fridge, in the pantry?
Because the venison has to be fresh. They didn't have refrigerators in those days, so venison is something that you have to go and hunt.
Okay, so one is practically,
so Thursdays is venison, so he's got to go hunt.
So he doesn't have so meat couldn't be stored.
Right.
Why didn't he go out there and slaughter a cow? Why didn't he shaft a goat? In other words, you're right, they didn't store it, but they had flocks. If he was rich, he had flocks.
But he likes venison.
Why does he like venison?
But he can't tell them apart. We see that later.
Right, that's right. He can't. Because Yaakov brings the Gedi.
Yeah.
Right. So the Gedi, by the way, is a goat, which is the meat is very tough. That's why we don't usually process goat meat. You have goat cheese, you have goat milk, right? But the meat, then that's why it looks like it's venison, which is also a tougher kind of meat. It's more stringy. It's not as much fat.
Okay, because I've never been to Uganda that serves venison, but people told me that it's a really, really nice tasting meat.
Okay, but it's not fatty. It's not fatty.
No, it's not fatty.
Someone's saying it is nice tasty. So would goat meat be tasty if you prepared it properly. But it's I don't know. I only had venison once. I can't remember what it tasted like.
Game meat.
I don't know what that means. Okay, but it's not fatty for sure. So the Ramban says, well, why would he go send them out to go get, if he had all these flocks, why would he send them out to go catch a deer? Not just he liked the meat. And when Yitzchak says he wanted to bring tzayid, from Esav should bring tzayid, and he doesn't eat from his own animals, Ken Yasu Hadsarim Mamlachim. This is what actually the nobility and the kings do. Bocharim b'tzayid mikol machal. They choose to bring hunted food from every type of food. They wanted hunted, maybe for freshness. V'cholamim yovilu mehem shalom ora. And all nations bring from what they can catch a gift to the king. To show that they are in awe of him or in fear of him. And Esav wanted to ingratiate himself to his father, to bring all of his hunted food to his mouth, in order to eat all the time. And this way he would be easy to awaken the love of the father to his son. Even though Yitzchak has plenty of animals to shech, he still built a special relationship that he would send his son to go catch a special animal for him.
Yeah. So
right. Yeah.
I was just thinking along the same lines that the father knew that Esav liked hunting.
Yeah.
So as a father, you give the boy something to do that he likes to do, right, in order to have a certain relationship.
You build a relationship with the thing that you love.
So he would say, "Go and hunt me a venison."
Right.
Because he knew he liked it. He likes hunting.
Right.
Like my dad used to take me fishing.
Right. And you build a relationship through the joint activity. So it's not joint activity; it's an activity that Esav likes to do for his father. So the point of it being, though, it is not a proof that Yitzchak had no money. He had plenty of flocks, but he wanted to kind of build a relationship with his son Esav, and the love, and Esav wanted to bring this as a way to foster the relationship with his father.
Exactly.
So and what Yitzchak says to Esav, bring me the food, and after I eat your good food, I will bless you. It's not really meant as the reward for bringing me the food or some kind of bribery to do things improperly. He wanted to connect himself, connect his soul to the soul of Esav. It means to connect the relationship to each other, and he will then therefore want to bless him. He wanted to bless him when he felt good about him. He wanted to feel the best he could. What's the best he could? He ate his food. So that's one shot or variation. A variation on this is he knew after he ate, and Asa would bring him good food and a good meal, he would feel happy. And we know that you get Ruach HaKodesh when you're feeling Sameach, right? You're feeling Simcha. Okay, Ke'inyan, as it says, so it says, I think it's about Elisha, who said, bring me a person to play the lyre, the harp, and he will play it, and the Ruach Hashem will come upon me. So you see that to get the Shekhinah, you have to feel in a good mood. So Yitzchak says, I want to bless you. I want to get the Ruach HaKodesh to bless you, my son. So give me food, I'll feel in a good mood. So now, second next question is, when Yaakov is sent away at the end of the parsha, and he has nothing, and he has this dream, and he wakes up and he says, God, I want you to give me beged lilbosh, lechem lechol, food and shelter, and I've got no assets. How come he didn't give him any assets? He didn't get any riches. He was running away. He ran away without his brother even knowing he escaped from the land. He'd leave with large riches and wealth and camels and all kinds of stock. Then his brother Esav would know he's leaving, and he would go after him.
I'm just thinking about the story with Hagar. When Abraham sends her away,
so that's
with nothing.
Yes, so that's a rejection of Hagar and a rejection of Ishmael. This is not a rejection of Yaakov. Yaakov runs away to Lavan to go find a wife, and Yitzchak understands that it has to happen, and Rivka understands it. Why don't they really give him foods for the journey? Eliezer goes to find a wife. He brings 10 camels.
Yeah, that's right.
So the answer is because he was trying to slip away. Rabotenu Amru, and the Ramban brings even the Medrash who says something else, and this you may have heard, Shegazlu Mimeno, that really Yaakov left with riches, but Eliphaz, the elder son of Esav, ran after him, and he says, and he catches up with Yaakov, and he says, I don't know what to do. I know you're a good guy. My father says I have to kill you. What should I do? I have to respect my father. So Yaakov says to Eliphaz, take all my money, and you leave me with nothing. The Talmud says, Ani chashiv kameis. I'm worthless. Like I'm almost dead. If you forget the Talmud, I'm almost dead. I've got nothing here. You'll be doing your father's will by leaving me here in the wilderness with no assets at all. So Eliphaz does that. So the Medrash says that's why Yaakov had nothing. So which means he did leave with wealth. Okay? So therefore, he really was rich. He did have, he could have left with wealth, but he did leave with wealth because he needed to sneak out. Esav brought food to the father because the father wanted to be sameach and to give the bracha from when he felt good about it, or to get Ruach HaKodesh. Now, why did Yaakov need to borrow the clothing of Esav to come in to go to get the bracha? Who said that Yaakov didn't have any really good clothing to wear? When Esav would go into the field to hunt, he would flip his good clothing with his hunting clothing. Because Yitzchak was blind and he would always touch his son and his garments. So Rivka put the garments of Esav onto Yaakov in order that she wouldn't recognize. That's a simple pshat. Not because he didn't have clothing to go see his father. Okay, you see exactly what happened. That when Yaakov comes in, Yitzchak smells the smell of his garments. What do you smell? He actually put them into balsam to make them smell nice. It's not smelly smell, but it smelled like the same kind of perfume that Esav did. Kinyan Katuv, as the pasuk says in Tehillim, So everybody had their own spices, and therefore he used the spice, he used the clothing of Esav, which had been perfumed, which had been Febrezed with these kind of spices, that he would be disguised as Esav itself. Okay. Yes.
So from here we also see that Esau was rich because he had 2 suits for hunting. The clothes were very expensive.
Right.
And he had, just for hunting, he had 2.
That's a good point.
Him
Right.
And one.
That's true. So he had 2 clothes, unless he had 2 pairs of clothing. Yeah.
Just for hunting.
Just for hunting, for good days and bad days, for rainy days and dry days. Yeah. So having 2 pairs of clothing is, you're right, and they're just hunting clothing, they're shmata clothing.
But still, everything was expensive then.
Right, correct, I agree, okay. And the last thing he says, Vashelam Orinav, and the fact that Yitzchak was blind, and he says, and you see that God took away blind, he made him blind, and saying we took away his riches. That's not true. Im Haita Siba Me'et Hashem, was this a reason? This is Hinehu Kadesh. This is the one he says was a foolish question. Hinehu Kadesh Yivorech Yaakov. The reason that Yitzchak became blind was in order to be able to give the blessing to Yaakov, because he couldn't see. But he couldn't see, and he called Esav. The simple pshat is he got old, he had cataracts, he couldn't see. But that's what it says. He couldn't see, and then he called Esav. So you see the same thing says the Ramban when Yaakov got old, in the end of Sefer Bereshit, when Yaakov got old, he also couldn't see. And the same thing with Achia Shiloni in Sefer Melachim, Ki Kamo Einav Misevo, his eyes couldn't see. And the difference, the only one who didn't have this, V'yisapeh Moshe Rabbeinu Pella, and the Torah tells us at the end of the life of Moshe, in his last day, it points out that Moshe did not go blind. Lo Chasai, no, his eyes didn't weaken. That's the nace about Moshe. But it was natural that people's eyesight would degenerate as they got much older. Or else you say it was because of the actual bracha that it was being set up, that he would confuse Esav, and Yaakov could come and dressed as Esav. So the whole purpose of this being is that the story is that why does Esav not want the birthright? He didn't really care about these kinds of things. He didn't want to be a leader. He simply wanted to look out for Zichalain for himself. So that's really the basic fundamental machloka between Ramban and between Ibn Ezra. Was it a practical reason why Esav gets sold the birthright? Was it really a worthwhile kind of sale because he had no food? Or was it simply it was worth nothing to him because he was mevazeh the birthright, because he didn't really speak to him, because he only wanted to give taiva for himself at that point?
But when we talk about him being a leader or not, but he was a leader because he had a whole army behind him, right?
Later on, yes, true, yes.
So he had that character already.
Yeah, again. Okay, first Ramban. One more Ramban. Okay, so let's go to Chavav Pasuk Hey. Pasuk Hey. 26 verse 5. This is when Yitzchak goes down to Avimelech. Okay.
By the way, the thing about the lentils,
yes,
you'll find them on the Moroccans. It's a tradition not to eat lentils.
No lentils?
No lentils.
Because of this?
Well, some of us will eat it, but a lot of them, because of this,
they
won't eat lentils.
All right, good. All right.
It's interesting.
The Medrash, by the way, says, see, I'll just flip it around to the Medrash. Ashkenazim study Medrash. So it says the reason that Yaakov was making lentil soup was because this was the day that Avram died.
Right, and that's when it's served.
That's correct. You do serve it then. Yeah. Right, so lentils are round and so forth. Right. And that's why he's serving it. This is Sudat Havrah.
Exactly. And that's the only time it's served.
Outside of that situation.
Exactly.
I definitely went to soup this week.
Okay, everybody does. Okay, except Sfaradim. It's good to know. Okay. So when Yitzchak is going to go down to the land of the Flishtim, there's a ra'av, there's a famine, and maybe on Thursday I'll talk a little bit why the famine really signifies. But the pasuk says in pasuk 5, God tells Yitzchak that you can't go down to Mitzrayim. You have to live in this land. So he ends up going to the land of Gerar. And it says, and God renews the promise to Yitzchak, not Yaakov yet. It says, Gur bar tzadod v'yemcha v'aracheka. It says, verse 3, Ki l'chol hazarcha atena kol atzot ha'el. I'm going to give you and your descendants all these lands here. V'akimoti et hashvah shenishpat l'Avram avicha. I'm going to carry out the promise I made to Avram. The promise is being underscored again. V'beiti zarcha kochach v'shamayim. I will make your descendants many, multiply like the stars of the heavens. V'natatil zarcha et kol atzot ha'el. Give them all this land. V'barchu kol b'zarcha kol v'yaretz. Your descendants will be blessed. Why? Eka v'sheshma Avraham b'kol. Because Avram listened to my voice, he kept my mishmarot, my mitzvot, my chukim, and my torot. So Avram was the one who keeps the different kinds of mitzvot, and Rashi identifies what those mitzvot are, and Ramban is going to repeat them. But the Ramban is actually going to discuss, did the patriarchs keep the mitzvot before the Torah was given? Or does Avram keep the mitzvot? It seems that Avram is identified more directly here with them, not about all the avot, or some of the avot, some
mitzvot. You see them when the angels come. He says he gave them milk and gave them meat.
Correct. Well, there's nothing wrong with having milk before meat.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
He could have given them the opposite way around, but he didn't.
Right. So actually, the truth is, you've got to do a bit of a fancy dancing there. You really can't have milk and meat in the same meal, even if you have milk and then have meat.
How does that work?
So you have to actually start and have another meal. Though on Shavuot, there are people that they wash, they have milk, and then they wash again, they have meat. You really can't have it in the very same meal. We're afraid they'll get mixed up. Even if the milk happens before it's on the table, it's still around. Okay, so anyway, let's go try to understand what happens here. Did they actually do the mitzvot? Did they not do the mitzvot? The obviously big knocker why we think they did not do the mitzvot is Yaakov marries two sisters. Correct? Yaakov marries two sisters, do we agree?
Yes.
All right, and according to the Medrash, actually, Bilhah and Zilpah are also sisters. So he marries four sisters, so it's a quadruple type of sin. That's his law of incest. He builds a matzeva. We find that Yaakov builds a matzeva. Matzeva does not mean a headstone. Matzeva means an altar. A mizbeach is made of many stones. Matzeva is one large stone. The Torah says you're not allowed to build a matzeva. So you can't make one big, humongous type of stone as an altar. You make an altar of different stones. That's the Goyim used to make it that way. It looks like a skukas Goyim. So on the other hand, this pasuk says Vayishmor Mishmarti. Look at the Ramban in pasuk Hey. So Rashi says, what's Mishmarti? Bekoli. He followed my voice. So when I tested Abraham, he followed Mishmarti, my watches. Gzerot larchaka. These are different gzerot to stay away from things. Even the drabanans that would be made later on, Kagon Shniot larayot. These are secondary incestual relationships. Shvut l'Shabbat, rabbinic additions to Shabbat. Avram kept mitzvotai. What are the mitzvot? So Rashi says, mitzvot shilo lo nichtavot din hu shikatzu. If they hadn't been written, the mitzvot had not been written down, Avram would have kept them anyway. They did. Kagon gezel, shvich. So mitzvot means laws. If they were not written down, you'd keep kagon gezel, like stealing, shvichu dami, murder. So these are laws that you would set up even if God never gave them. Avram kept the mitzvot. Chugotai, what are chukot? Dvorim sheyetzar ravu mot olam meshiven aleim. The laws that the nations and the Yitzhar tells us not to do, which are nonsensical, such as achilat chazir levishat shatnez shein tamad davar. Eating, you can't eat chazer. You can't wear shatnez. These are laws that have no reason. Elamel kazarchu kol avadav. So Avram kept those. Torotai, he kept my Torah. Lavi Torah shema pe'alach l'mosh misin. Avram kept even the oral Torah, not just the written Torah. So these, what Rashi says, which the Ramban is going to underscore, is Avram kept everything about the Torah. He kept laws that you would have figured out, laws you wouldn't figure out, even laws that were chukim you'd have no reason for, even extensions that were rabbinic extensions, even Torah Shema, the oral law. Avram kept this, and therefore I'm going to be with you, Yitzchak, because Avram kept all these laws. The implication is that the Avot, or at least Avram, seems to have kept the entire Torah even before it was given. Okay? Does that make sense to you?
Not really. Not really.
Then Yitzchak. Well, it seems that Avram is the one who's identified. Avram is the one who's identified with keeping them, right? You would suggest, and that would be the natural correlation, if he kept them, and Yitzchak is keeping the traditions of Avram, and Yaakov keeps the tradition of Yitzchak, he would keep them, right? You would think. But it seems to be, the pasuk seems to talk about Avram keeping these mitzvot.
What would be the motivation for us to insist that Abraham kept all the mitzvot?
What would be the motivation?
Yeah.
Explaining the pasuk. Explaining this pasuk that Avram keeps the mitzvot.
What does it say?
In other words, the motivation, because when God says to Yitzchak, I'm going to look after you, because in verse 5, Avram kept Ekav v'sheshma Avraham b'koli v'shma mishmarti mitzvotai chukotai v'torotai. It says that Avram kept the mitzvot, the mishmarot, the chukim, the Torah, the mitzvot. It says mitzvot. By the way, a similar terminology, I'm trying to think, has it come there? Maybe not. I shall look up something for a moment.
Abraham obeyed my time and observed my safeguards, my commandments. Maybe he means the commandments that he gave him at that time, not all of them,
Right.
but just the certain commandments.
Correct.
When you run out of things that you can
Right. So this is
he kept.
right. So
That must be the oral.
it looks like he's keeping everything. That's the motivation for it. Your question is, why would Avram do it? I mean, the answer is that Avram does it because if it's logical and the Almighty would do it, and you're in tune with what the Almighty wants, you can figure out what God wants from you. Even the chukim. In other words, if you are so in tune to what the Almighty wants that the Almighty will say, take your son, your only son, and you say, yes, Hineni, I'm ready to do this now. So logic would say that you would understand what God wants from you to do besides just nisyonot, nisyon tests, that you would understand the mitzvot that God wants us to do. That's the undercurrent behind it, that there's an inherent spiritual value to doing the mitzvot, even if we don't understand them, and we should be able to second guess God if we're really on the high enough level to figure it out. That's the concept. So says the Ramban, V'im Kain, Kol ze banui al dat shayav Ramakayim Meshamer Torah Shlon Dat. It's all based upon the fact that you understand that Avram kept the Torah before it was given. V'chein amru, and the Chazal say a similar kind of story when it comes up later on in the end of Sefer Breshit. This is 26:5.
26.
What page are you on?
330.
330. Okay, one more flop. Okay, so it says when Yosef reveals himself to his brothers and wants to send stuff back, he says, "Vayitain lahem Yosef agalot." Yosef sent wagons, and the Medrash explains, "Sheperish mimenu beparshat egla rufa sheosek batog kishem shayu avotav." So in other words, he was studying with his father the parsha of egla rufa, the heifer that you break the neck when you find the body. And you don't know what to do with it, and therefore when he wants to send back to his father, he's alive, he sends agalot as a remez to remind the father this was the last lesson that they had learned together. So once again, it means the same idea that Yosef and Yaakov were studying Torah. V'ad akshav lo nidat Torah, and Torah was not given.
What was
Same ideas. But it looks like there's a difference between studying. The key to Avram is he not only studies, he practices it. Vayishmor mishmarti. And the Medrash says, Varekatu vayishmor mishmarti mitzvotai v'chukotai. And it says, then the Medrash there says, Hashama Moshe Mishamer Fila Dikduke Torah v'yamalamed lavanav. That Yitzchak, that Avram would keep the Torah. This is how the Medrash concludes there. And he would even keep the Dikduke Torah, and he would teach his children this, and this is how it was passed on. So this is the premise. Now you may say you don't need the premise. It's not what the pasuk means. Ramban accepts this premise as tacitly or completely. He says there are a couple of questions. V'yesh l'shol in Cain echekim Yaakov matzeva. How does Yaakov put up a matzeva? It says a couple of times. It says that Yaakov puts a matzeva, and it says in Dvarim lo tochim lecha matzeva asher sanei Hashem lekecha. This is Dvarim chapter 16. You shall not put up a matzeva. One big stone is a one stone altar, humongous boulder. That you didn't do that because that's what the Goyim did. When God doesn't like it. Or how does Yaakov nasa shtei achayot? How does he marry two sisters? Uchadad Rabotenu in the Medrash, which says that Abilah and Zilpah were sisters as well. It's Arba. It's four sisters. Amram nasa dodoton. How does Amram marry his aunt, which is Yocheved? So you cannot marry a first aunt, a direct aunt. That's also an incest. Moshe Rabbeinu hakim shtei mesrei matzeva. And how does Moshe set up 12 pillars that were matzevot when they crossed the Jordan? How could they do things, the descendants of Abraham, Yaakov and Amram and others and Yitzchak, how could they do this if they're blessing Abraham for keeping them? and he would bless his children to do these kinds of things. And we know, in fact, we even have other midrashim that say that Yaakov as well did it. Yaakov darshu sheshimer et Shabbat v'kavat tchumim. Yaakov kept Shabbos, and he kept even tchum Shabbos, how far you can even walk. He says, maybe Shabbat was special. Shabbat is a little unique. Why is Shabbat unique? Because Shabbat comes up in the creation story. So you could argue that they would keep Shabbat even if they didn't keep the rest of the Torah. So this is not such an ironclad proof. Because Shabbat reminds us about Breshit. So how is it possible that the other things, though, are still questions that they didn't keep? It looks like they broke the laws. If Avram kept the laws, Avram is blessed for keeping the laws, and it looks like they did not. And maybe you could say Mishmarti is not really mitzvot as we know them. Shniot larayot shebnei Noach. Maybe it means only secondary prohibitions for bnei Noach. Mitzvotai is gezel shvich adamim, and chugotai, the laws that we don't understand, are Ever Menachai, Kilayim, Shalarbot, Beimal, Varkavat Ilan. These are laws of the Sheva mitzvahs bnei Noach. V'torasai is dinim v'yisurei avodah zarah. These are making laws and not to worship idols. All of these she'elu kulam nistavu behen bnei Noach. If you don't like the pshat that says that Avram kept all the mitzvot, you can accept the alternate pshat that says he only kept Sheva mitzvot bnei Noach, and all of these things, chukim and mishmarti and all that, is really about the seven Noach laws. He would keep this. He would keep them very carefully. That the Talmud of Avodah Zarah of Avram Avinu on Avodah Zarah, the Talmud of Avodah Zarah was 400 different questions and answers, or different discussions. So in other words, he learned Avodah Zarah, he knew Avodah Zarah, because that's one of the 7 mitzvahs of Bnei Noach. And another thing, v'darshu b'mei sharim, that says when Yitzchak was able to grow mei sharim, which is not mei sharim, means 100 times. It says, so the Medrash says shemada duha b'lemasor, he gave meiser, he gave 1/10, 10 out of 100, which had grown. So it doesn't mean that he gave meiser. He was very, very, very conscientious of social value, so he would give a tithe. He would tithe not because it's a mitzvah, but because he had riches and he gave to the poor. Olakon Hashem, where he gave to those who served Hashem, like Shem ve'Aver, like Kohen Le'Elyon. So in other words, all of this is an alternative pshat, but he still wants to try to explain how is it possible that the descendants of Avram may not have kept the mitzvot. So what has he done until now? He says there are 2 pshatim. One pshat is Avram kept the mitzvot, and the other patriarchs kept the mitzvot. One pshat is Avram kept the mitzvot, his descendants did not keep the mitzvot. He's really asking questions, he has to answer them. How is it possible? The third pshat would be that Avram didn't keep mitzvot, really kept the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach. Not really 613. But the Ramban really wants to underscore the fact that Avram kept the mitzvot themselves and try to explain how is it that the others looks like they did not keep the mitzvot. So he says, so even though you could explain that Avram did not keep the 613 mitzvot, the Ramban prefers the pshat that he actually did. Okay, did I confuse you too much? Try it again. Do it quickly. First he said that Avram kept all the mitzvot. So the question then is, well, what about his descendants? So it looks like they should keep the mitzvot. On the other hand, we know a couple of cases. He marries 2 sisters. Amram marries his aunt. He puts up matzeva. How is it possible they broke these laws if they're supposed to keep the mitzvot? And in fact, we have other references that Yaakov keeps Shabbat. And Yaakov gives Meiser. So he says, well, maybe Shabbat was special because it's Meiser Bracious. Maybe Meiser is not about giving Meiser. It's about being just a generous person. So then he says, maybe Avram didn't even keep the mitzvot. Maybe Avram just kept the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, which would answer all the questions. Right? But he leaves that and he comes back to what his own pshat is, which is whether they kept the mitzvot. Vanera Eli, it seems to me, Midat Rabotenu, from along the lines of what the rabbi said that Avram kept the mitzvot. And here's the key: Sha'Avram Avinu lamad et kol haTorah kula b'ruach hakodesh. He learned the Torah with ruach hakodesh. V'yasak ba, and he did it. Uvatami mitzvotev v'sodesel. He studied it. He was involved in it, and he studied the reasons and the secrets behind it. And he carried out the mitzvot. He was not obligated, just on a voluntarily carried out the mitzvot.
Yeah, but Moshe Rabbeinu himself, when he received the Torah, he didn't know anything about it until that time, right?
Correct. So in Egypt they didn't.
He didn't
because Moshe is post. Moshe is, well, you see in a moment. But Moshe is post patriarchal age. It's only the patriarchs who seem to do this. So, but how? But says the Ramban, he throws in here a knayt that answers everything. He only kept the mitzvot in the land of Israel. So Avram, when he kept the mitzvot, only does it in Israel. When he leaves Israel, he's off the hook.
Oh, so he can eat kosher at home, but not
so to speak. Yes. Okay. But here's how it explains it. But what it means, by the way, the real place. Here's what it does mean. The real place to do mitzvot is in Israel. Okay. Right. So Yaakov, and the Ramban says something which has been repeated by others besides the Ramban. Yaakov nasach hayod b'chutz la'aretz. Yaakov marries two sisters outside of Israel. He's in Lavan's. He's in Mesopotamia. V'chein Amram nasach dodato b'chutz la'aretz. And Amram also married his aunt in Egypt. It's outside of Israel. Ke mitzvot heim mishpat elokei haaretz. The mitzvot all become related to serving the God of the land. In other words, the mitzvot are mitzvot of the land of Israel, even if they're not in the land of Israel. So even though we have even though the mitzvot that are not related to Israel's land but related to our bodies, we have to keep everywhere. Nonetheless, the real place where Avram kept them was in the land of Israel, because the real place in the mitzvot is actually in Israel itself. And Ramban says, I will tell you, I'll explain this to you later on, which he explains later on in the middle of Vayikra, which he will says that the real place is that for us to do mitzvot is really the land of Israel. The Ramban will talk about it in Sefer Vayikra. And the reason that we keep the mitzvot outside of Israel is we should not forget how to do mitzvot, so we'll be prepared when we come back to Israel.
Oh, is that right?
So right.
You can't just say, that's amazing.
Well, it is amazing, right? In other words, it's called Hatzivi Lach Tzionim. Put up signposts that you'll remember where the road is, so that when you come back to Israel, you'll actually remember it.
And the fact is, we are going to be in Israel one time or another.
Sooner or later. So the whole purpose, the whole idea of doing mitzvot outside of Israel has a diminished value, even to us. Not saying not to do it. But it's not the primary value of the mitzvah. Every mitzvah, even a mitzvah that has no connection to the land of Israel, is connected to the land of Israel as the primary location. It's a famous pshat of the Ramban, okay? So in other words, like we're practicing. Yeah, we're practicing. Drill. We're doing a drill, so when we go back, we'll be ready to just pick up where we are. What does it say in the Shemona Esrei? Not really here.
That can you say? I will remember, but I won't do.
No, that's not really not what I'm looking for. Right. I mean, the punishment for not doing mitzvot in the second paragraph of the Shema is if you don't do the mitzvot, what happens to you? Get exiled, right? If you follow strange gods and worship them, there won't be rain. And you'll be thrown off the land. So the implication is that being off the land is because you didn't do the mitzvot. So then what does that mean? It means if you want to do the mitzvot, you got to go back to the land. It doesn't really say it directly, but that's somewhat of the implication. And therefore, don't keep the mitzvot because you'll be on the land of Israel. But the Ramban says it more emphatically in Vayikra Perek Yud Chet and Parshas I think Achim was Kedoshim, one of the others. It says at the end of Vayikra where it talks about the actual Tochacha. So, and that's what he's alluding to here. It says I lost my place. Right. So, ki mitzvot mishpat delakei arts, hema pishu shar b'chol v'adigu b'chol makom v'kvar ramzu rabbis ne'no zora zeh. That's what the Medrash says. He's referring to, that he's going to explain. V'niyadit kol kol bezvat Hashem. I'm going to explain it more in Vayikra Perek Yud Chet. Now, there's one or two exceptions to that rule. Matzeva mitzvah shenat chad Shabbos man yiduahi. So the matzeva that Yaakov put up, there's another pshat. The Gemara talks about the fact that initially matzeva was not wrong. You could make a matzeva for Hashem, and later when the Goyim began to make matzevot for their idols, so then it became prohibited for Jews to do so. And it only became later on, K'moshe Darshu says, don't make why did God hate it? It became hated by God, even though it was loved by God in the Avot. Why? Because the nations took it over. So because the nations made matzevot, made big boulders as altars, we can't do it as well. So Yosef Darshu, another exception. Yosef Darshu shayim shamer ta Shabbat afilu b'mitzvayim. Yosef kept Shabbat even in Mitzvayim. Okay, so that's an exception. Shabbat is like all the mitzvot. It's a testimony about the creation of the world. And Yosef did so to teach his children about the creation story, the belief in God. And Yosef did it to his children to keep Shabbat, even in Mitzrayim, because that was important for their identity against the idol worship, that God created the world. But otherwise, the other mitzvot was not kept outside of Israel. So that's the simple pshat of the Ramban. So in other words, the whole idea is that the Avot kept the mitzvot, but they didn't keep the mitzvot outside of the land of Israel. The correlation of this will be, the Ramban will point out, that when Yaakov comes back to the land of Israel, with Rachel and Leah, what has to happen? He has to keep the mitzvot. One of the mitzvot is he can't marry two sisters. What happens? One of the first things that happens when he gets back to the land of Israel, Rachel dies. Okay? So, by coming back till now, she dies in childbirth, and it's a story, and there's Binyamin and all that, but and it doesn't happen the first moment, the first centimeter he walks into the land of Israel. But her fate was sealed the moment they actually returned to the land of Israel. This, by the way, is working assuming that the shvachot, the maidservants, are not sisters. Right? If the analogy is really just dealing with the two sisters who are identified as biological sisters, Rachel and Leah. So one of them would have to die. Okay?
And why Rachel and not Leah?
I don't know.
Oh, she was the first one. Leah was the first.
Leah was married first. There you go. Leah was married first.
Right,
so she's the second one, so she goes first.
She goes first, yeah.
Right, to restore what would be one wife, one sister.
But according to the view that the Avot kept the mitzvot of Bnei Noach, that means that Bnei Noach are also forbidden marrying two sisters, or forbidden to marry the aunt.
So that would not. You're right. That would not answer that question. That's right. Because there still is a law of incest. Is there a law of incest for Bnei Noach not to marry two sisters? I don't know. No, brother.
But even if it's for that, hard to imagine that they would have the one not to marry the aunt.
They would have to marry.
That they were forbidden to marry their aunt.
Right. So you're right. We don't know exactly what are the Bnei Noach in laws of incest. So it would not be a problem for Amram. The question, would it be a problem for Yaakov to marry two sisters? I'm not sure. I don't know what was in Bnei Noach's prohibitions of incest. Right? The sisters are related to themselves. They're not married to a husband. They're not related to the husband. Usual laws of incest, their husband and wife can't be related to each other. Then finally the Ramban just ends off and says, you know what? This is what I think is the pshat, but once again, you could, if you really like the simple pshat, v'derech pshat, papeushu, mishmarti. It's not really about doing mitzvot. It's not even about doing mitzvot of Bnei Noach. Mishmarti, when it says Avram kept my mishmarot, hi amunav alakim. It's simply just belief in God. Mishmeret means to keep something. V'hainushim, I'm sorry, skip the line. Mishmeret amunat elokut, shamin b'shem amiyuchad. He believed in the one God. V'shamar mishmeret zu b'libo, and he kept this in his heart. And he disagreed and he argued against those idol worshippers. He called upon God. He was Shomer God. Mitzvotai, mitzvot, all the commands. What God commanded him, leave your land. Now it's a commandment. It's not a commandment of Taryag mitzvot. It's not a commandment of mitzvah. But no, God commanded him, leave your land. Viola Beno, take your son. That's a commandment. Greshat Hamad, chase out Hagar and Benah and Yishmael. These are commandments. He did them. Chukotai lelecha b'darkei Hashem, to follow the ways of Hashem. Liyot chanun racham v'osei tzedakah mishpat. Follow the ways of God. God is, how do you become like God? You do acts of kindness. Chanun v'racham v'osei tzedakah mishpat. L'tzavod banav et bito bohem. For his children should do this acts of kindness. That's what Avram is. Torah. What's the Torah? So he didn't do the mitzvot as we know them. He did the milah. He did the brit milah for himself. Ubanav avdav u'mitzvot b'nei Noah kulam. And maybe also mitzvot b'nei Noah. There is all the Torah. So the pasuk doesn't really even have to talk about doing mitzvot specifically, as we know them. It just referred to certain primary acts that Avram did, that he followed the ways of God, that God commanded him directly. So there are really three pshatim at the end of the day. Pshat one is Avram does all the mitzvot, and the patriarchs do the mitzvot, but where? In Israel. Right? Second pshat, which is, I guess he rejects, is Avram does the mitzvot, but his descendants don't do the mitzvot. Third pshat is they do the mitzvot of Bnei Noach. And the fourth pshat is it's not really about mitzvot, it's about listening to whatever God said. If God said take your son, that's also a mitzvah. Throw out Hagar, that's also a mitzvah. That's what Avram did. So you can have your choice of what the pshatim are. The Ramban seems to like the one that about doing them in Israel, because Ramban does really stress the importance of living in Israel. It's a mitzvah to live in Israel, and therefore coming to Israel, you would be the place to do the actual mitzvot. Okay?
But the prevalent view is that he did the mitzvot
everywhere. So then you have to explain how he married two sisters. How does Amram marry an aunt? So, or it's just Avram. It's just Avram.
Horat Shah.
Or it's Horat Shah. Just for that.